All right, thank you very much, Sam. So thanks everyone for coming to listen to a bit of my rambling. It was a very weird thing that happened to get this talk going. Ben has a very strong part and partial fault, I guess, in this talk. I guess I introduce myself. I'm David. I've been around the block for a long time, and I am working in information security, more focused around security management, blue team side of the technology. But I also like toys, and I like tools, and I like to play a lot, and that's what's kind of made up these talks happening. Because I work in information security, I think it's pretty much the answer to the why in this slide is I need to do other things rather than my day-to-day work in order to maintain some level of personal balance, to drive creativity around, to feed the soul and to be in the zone. Apparently, this is the technical term if you're a psychologist, to get into the zone. And that zone is quite important for me. It helps me do a lot of things in my thinking process. It helps it flow. It is absolutely fun for me. I am a tinkerer. I like to tinker. I tinker all the time. And I think everyone should, and I think everyone could. And a lot of questions comes around whether it's 3D printing comments on Twitter or the chaos of my desk, which you see it in a much larger picture in a moment. All those things kind of comes together for me to introduce balance. And I like to think it also helps me saves a lot on therapy in terms of managing that cost. So it drives always driven me to why not. I like my creative side as well as I like my analytical side, and I need to nourish them both. And ultimately, when you drop a square cube of sugar into a 1 cup of coffee and you have that, this is this little moment of satisfaction during the day that helps me feed that soul. And because we have a time constraint, I have a lot of slides. I apologize in advance, but we will go a little bit around what's happening here in the shed, in the office, in the cinema late at night, some of the tools I have and some of the outcome. I will be around throughout the day. If there's any questions, I appreciate there is not a lot of time for questions, and I do have a fair amount of pictures to go through. So this is how it looks inside. You saw my shed from the outside in the previous slide. This is how it was before some stage of renovation. I saw some people on Twitter asking about, oh, what do I use as a worktop? How do I build my workspace? It's like, in my personal opinion, whatever works for you work. This is slightly chaotic. I can't tell you that when you're rebuilding your work environment and it starts to look better, you actually manage to maintain it over time. At least is the reality of my workshop. It's constantly ever evolving. Things are being added, more storage, more tools, more storage, more things that's happening there. We'll go into some of them into more details, but that's give you an idea of what does the creative side, I guess, of my workshop, the manufacturing side looks like of my office. This is my desk, and this is the office side. Some of the reason the desk is there is because it's funny, you go to millions of furniture shops, like endless amount of furniture shops, and you're trying to find a desk. You're trying to find a desk which is big enough to fit so many monitors, and they don't make them, so you have to make your own, which I quite like. And again, it helps me go and think about cutting wood, measuring it, maybe painting it, and how do I finish it up. And in the process, I might have figured out that's new wording I wanted to put in the new security policy segment I'm being editing. So I adopt my storage, my furniture as best as I can to my requirements because it is my shed. And as I said, I need the making in order to do the thinking. It's kind of really coexist for me. So I was be talking about all the things that happens late at night. This should be a video there. Yes. This is 3D printing. This is where my 3D printing, personal 3D printing experience started. I saw some online advert. It was a 99-pound printer. I put the pre-order in, and 6, 7, 8, 9, I don't remember how many weeks later, I walked around London and picked a super heavy box, which was started as that. Today, it's kind of evolution of this beast. It's all the same component from the previous model that was bought for good money. This is just made at home. And there are a few other, oops, wrong way, 3D printers. So this is the current 3D printer I have now. Because of my virtual background, you can't see the plate, but it's producing pretty decent prints. So I'm quite happy with that. And I have a little printer to play and tinker with, which we'll talk about the tinkering in a moment. That's my first CNC machine. I like machines. I like tools, as I said at the beginning. This is a very, very cheap CNC machine I picked from Amazon, I believe. I highly recommend against buying it, even for PCB manufacturing. The motor is just embarrassment. It's a 12-volt tiny, I think it's like 50 watts power. This is the new CNC machine in its mostly current state. As you can see, there's some hoses coming out of and additions. They are ever evolving. The things that, fun enough, I end up doing, but everyone I know ends up doing, I go to my local hackspace, you get a new machine, you get a new tool, you make more tools with it. So I made a tool for the tool to make life a little bit easier, to make more tools for the tool. So those are all relating to the CNC. There's lots of bits and fitting, mounting clumps that needs to happen. And sometimes those CNC machines that comes from some country far away, with maybe not the best level of electronics. They might have not engineered them themselves and looked at someone else's design and build it. They tend to fail. Lots of problems that I had with the controller together with the software that led it to be driven by an Arduino board on the picture on the right. And on the attempt on the MDF, this is a 1 centimeter lens, concave lens attempt, a pick with the CNC, just to make sure the controller is working. During the pandemic, the hackspace was kind of closed down and I realized I can't do any laser etching. So I built a laser engraver. It will cut some thin materials up to probably 2.5 millimeters. Dark materials will go fine. It's to do with the laser module itself, power limitation, capability of it. But it does move left and right and you can get a graphic file, send it through the processor and get it out at the end. Apart from the computer controlled devices, which are quite exciting, I tinker with lots of things. I have lots of tools, as you might have seen in the pictures. Some of my favorite are blow torches. There's a few of them in that picture. There's the orange hose at the back. You see it better in here. I make jewelry when I have the time. The big blue thing on the left is one of my latest acquisition. It is a rolling mill for soft metals. And as you can see, I managed to break the, if you can see, can I highlight on the top? No. I managed to break the cog. It was a lovely, lovely conversation with the Chinese vendor to try and get a replacement cog sent over. As I said, I have lots of tools. I put them on some, but there's no point trying to write them all. But tools are fit for purpose. They make things easier, as it tends to be. It's not just in IT. I end up collecting tools here in my office. Some of the other toys I had or have access to. This is my next door neighbor lathe that he just recently got rid of because he's clearing up his shed. And I am a member of the Reading Hackspace. It's called R-Lab. And some of the machinery, some of the equipments we have over there, so I can share with you before we go into the output of things. Everything will fall into an order, hopefully in 2.5 minutes or so. So that's the old 3D printer, which was part of the RipWrap self-replicating 3D printer. It is a movement that's still going on strong, but we now use a couple of Ultimakers, which I couldn't take pictures of as they have written phone numbers, which constitute as PII. And we have very, very strict rules in there. This is the metal lathe I get to play with now. And on the bottom right, there is the laser cutter from the Hackspace. And on the left, you can see a couple of the saws, the bandsaw and the table saw. We have facilities to cast some metal or turn some wood or work with steel to all sorts of varieties of degrees. So pretty much we're limited by our creativity, which is what we are trying to, what I am trying to talk about, right? So what? So we have a lot of tools and it's all great fun. So as I said, I do a bit of silversmithing. This is my lovely wife managed to convince me to get some stuff made for a Christmas fair. So it was a few months intensive of hammering and melting metal. but some things came out of it, and you can see some of those pictures. That particular ring on the right is one of my first attempt with that cheap CNC machine to do some Celtic engraving. It didn't come out very good, but for reference size, the ring band itself is 6mm. So it's not the biggest of engraving of all. The ring on the bottom is kind of tend to be the style of jewelry that comes out. It happened accidentally when I started teaching myself silversmithing and casting techniques. And this is natural material casting, which a lot of my things ends up looking along those lines. I guess artist style, not an artist, I'm a techie, so it's weird, but I do that for fun. I do that to relax. And my wife absolutely loves my hobby. So everything she doesn't manage to find a new owner to, she gets to keep, and it's a win-win. This was the last piece I've made. It was done for a friend's wife in the US. She's from West Virginia and wanted the state outline, the state flower, and the university logo on a brooch. And because it's a lot easier to do fine details when you have machines, this is when the CNC and everything starts to fit back into how does the workflow actually manifest. So though I can trace the flower line by hand, it's a lot easier to get the machine to drive it forward. I'll stay on the slide for a second. If you want to have a look, there's some more jewelry and some pictures on that website, my website, for your own entertainment. Right, so since we're talking about the tools, I think we pretty much covered what jewelry is like. Let's talk about stuff that comes out from a laser cutter. So the laser is in our lab in the Hackspace, and this is one of the first pieces I've made after spending mesmerizing hours looking at the machine moving left and right. This is glue only, my storage unit, that if you put too many hard drives, I can tell you the shelf falls down. This has also been made in the Hackspace. Funny enough, it was marked with the laser. The laser doesn't cut this thickness of material, but it's a great marking tool in order for you to have guidelines to go and hit it with the saw. So that's a collapsing table I kind of came up with and made probably a couple of years back. It was due to necessities. We needed to put some laptops in our spare room, which is tiny as hell, as you can tell. If I combine the wood and the laser and maybe a bit of boring, making holes, not boring, not entertaining, little pen holders with some quotes of wisdom, or I made Steve a knife from the old saw blade. The knife above I forged in the forge, in the Hackspace. We have a forge, so that started as a suspension spring and ended up being a knife. I have made some monitors. Again, I needed the casing, very handy when you can cut things to some accurate measure, use hot glue gun quite liberally and put everything in place. And you end up with your own custom monitors, which is pretty cool. As you can see, when you stack on your HP server that plays up, it's quite handy to drag it along with you into the garage and see if it works. Sorry, I need to just do a quick time check, so I won't delay anyone. Game controllers, retro gaming, we like to play. So again, I made another bigger monitor, and I don't need two monitors. So what do I do with a spare monitor? And I've seen this arcade online for too many hundreds of pounds. Like seriously, it's driven by Raspberry Pi. The electronic itself is like 15, 20 pounds on any Amazon, Alibaba, whatever, eBay, whatever you like to shop at. And we have an arcade machine. For those of you who goes to BSides London and might have been a rookie in 2018, you might have got a box, which I've made 22 of them. Brian helped gluing them all up on the day of the event for every single one of the rookie speakers, which is a great fun. And also for me, as a little way to say thank you for all these rookies that really never spoken before and feeling the heat. This is one of my favorite things that I made when GDPR came about, or just before GDPR was out. It was a joke. It started as a joke. I made one. This is the top one on the right, was done with the CNC. As you can see, the clean white engraving on it, still with the plastic. And there was some demand, so I ended up making 100 of those. I have none of them left in my possession. I mean, I have the template, I can make some more, but they were absolute success. If you have any, please put it in the Slack. I would love to know about that. This is our table router in the Hackspace, where we were missing some inserts. Take it to the laser, find some material in the right thickness, and you make as many inserts as you want. And again, tools to make tools in order to improve the tools. And as it is a creative aspect, ultimately, not just making tools. This is Lily, my youngest daughter, wanted the door sign. My Little Ponies was a hit back then. I think it was at the age of 6. So we have My Little Pony door sign, which is now off the door because we've grown up a bit. The same with the teddy bear. It's a felt that just design it in Inkscape. I mean, trace a couple of circles and a couple of squares around that, but put all the dotting line for the thread through the laser machine. So it's easy for little ones to sit down and entertain themselves for a bit. Up to more some serious stuff for those who like a bit of steak. Here is your own custom-made steak board that was etched in the laser, done all in the Hackspace. It's a nice piece of walnut, routed out with the drain tray and all that, and engraved in the laser machine, being filled, and then varnish treated, actually oiled in this case because it's a cutting board and a lot of blood, made us chopping board. This is a butcher board. This is more of the Hackspace facilities in terms of the planner, the saws, the clamps, which we'll touch about in a second. There is a very clumpy picture in my slide. It is a mini butcher's block because my wife cannot lift anything heavy with her wrists. So we do like our meat and we do want to chop it. I made a butcher block. It was requirements and the challenge of finding things that fits for purpose sometimes that drives me to create things. The same with this wood burner. I can't turn the camera because it's quite fixed, but this wood burner is my heat source in my office, in that office workshop shed. So moving the laser aside and going to 3D printing, a dust extractor for my CNC machine, which failed miserably, if I'm being honest, but at least the process of finding designs, adapting the designs to my specific machine needs, and then understanding that the biggest failing point is the rubber hose from the Hoover that weighs a ton, and the machine doesn't just cope with either the accuracy or the clamp does not cope with holding the plastic in place. 3D puzzles, figurines, lockpick holders, BSides logos from last year, which was made in 3D and printed out and was giving out to some of the people. I absolutely love Star Wars. I was showing it to Sam yesterday. We were playing with the blaster. So you make your own Star Wars bits and bobs because you can, it's great fun and it's relaxing to some extent. This I can stand up for, and I probably should take my virtual background for. But that was one hell of a printing job. It is series swords from the Witcher game. And let me just find out. Nope. My screen is still shared. Excellent. So let's find how do we take the virtual background off. Sorry about the few seconds delay in the flow. Aha. And hopefully on it, I don't know if I'm streaming myself, actually, if you're streaming the video, but it's quite a sword of a significant length, as you can see by the Dyson for comparison, which is 3D printed and reinforced with carbon fiber. Otherwise, the parts falls off. We 3D print wands or we turn them in the wood lathe. It goes all the way to making lockpicks. TSA number 7, open TSA number 7 locks, as you can tell, or having a nice holder for a yellow lock, because otherwise they really dig into the flesh when you handhold them to try and pick them. Here's an introduction to Bash. He's a new family mascot, but the picture on the bottom, Olga really into her archery, and she wanted a stabilizer for the bow. During the pandemic, the delivery time was super long on the archery shop. I don't know why they're not Amazon, but it takes them a long time to send your parts over. So by this time the shipping was processed and sent over, I've taken 3 old arrows and made a few fittings with some weights to reproduce that counterweight she was looking in the balance. She's got now a proper piece of tool that does its job avidly. So we talked about the CNC, reductive manufacturing, which is probably my favorite type of tinkering with machines. So this is a lot of clamps, as I said, but I had an idea of making a speaker. It is a 13 quid speakers module. I think there were 15 watts from eBay. And in the time it's taken them to arrive, it was leftovers of MDF and plywood, as you can see in the pictures, that end up with a couple of very functional, sounding better than 13 quid and looking all right as my office speakers. Same thing, CNC's crazy ideas. I have two little nephews, and I thought that a pencil-driven cars, when you can go and color them and take them with you when you go to a restaurant and you give you that pack of 4 pencils and the coloring sheet that finish after 20 seconds, can be nice. So it's stackable. You can run them as a separate car. You can put all of them together and you can have a play. And I like playing and I like toys. So as you can see, the outcomes of things, puzzles for the nephews, push-in stamps, push-in my merchandise, don't make stamps. I made some for my kids. Some Diffuse is the company I have now, the consultancy I have, and I've done Have a Rock in 2020. It's funny, I completely missed the Beer Farmers freebie drumsticks, but I've made that for my clients as a beginning of the year to, thank you for your business, which was quite a nice adventure to play with rotary controls on a CNC machine and a little bit of hackery because the old controller didn't quite want to work. And this is, again, just going back to that, don't buy that really cheap CNC. You might as well build your own. It's not too complicated. But if you look, I think on the top and on the bottom of the picture, it's very noticeable how the machine misses completely that straight line and taking 15-hour work. This is the size of a box of small box of matches, hotel matches kind of swatch thing. And it's quite frustrating after such a long time for have the machines to fail on accuracy or quality of the work. This is for lock picking set. There are a couple of repinning tools that I've made on the lathe with brass. Brass is probably the most fun material to work with when it comes to turning. It flakes amazing, like sparkly everywhere. It's terrible if you have any PCBs around. Should be a video here. You can just see it flying there in the bottom. It's like rain of brass. It's absolutely magnificent. I can watch it for hours on the machine, not on the video. But I've made a friend's kid a lock picking practice set. So everything from starting to pick all the way to repinning and cutting away your own keys, all in a little knit box. So again, I'm lucky. I have a CNC machine. I have access to all those kind of tools, and sometimes I have the time to actually, or dedicate the time for it late at night to go and play with those things I like. As I said at the beginning, for me, it's very important. It's that level of balance. A couple of other things that I don't know why the Bluetooth sniffer ended up being in here, because it never got any closure at the end. I had a project in mind with the RFID, the Bluetooth, and a couple of other bits that never taken. Maybe I need to add it to my list of projects. Never taken off. But on the left is a GPS module that's supposed to give me another source of NTP in order to balance time. I don't care about positioning. I more care about satellite timing send, which means I need a very low signal quality. As long as I can triangulate once, my time signal usually comes in flow, all right. Other Hackspace stuff, painting my daughter's bike. She's a Harry Potter fan. She wanted the Nimbus. We made the Nimbus. I'm not going to read you Dr. Seuss quote, but I think it's important, so I leave it here. I'm doing all right with time, I believe. So I have a couple of slides around resources, and let's go through them. Reading, Hackspace, RLab, it's things a little bit easier. I know I share some of my things up there. I know a lot of other people do. I use Keytronics for the rest of the material. Well, saying the rest, I use Keytronic for the plastics mainly. So perspex, dual layer vinyls, things like that comes from Keytronics. Really, really, really rarely the plywood laser, as I tend to buy it in a bigger quantities at a better cost elsewhere. Reddit has phenomenal channels for makers based on whether material or whether it's based on the type of manufacturing you want to do, whether it's CNC or 3D printing, all the way down to a specific model of a tool with the subreddits. There is wealth of information there. I mean, YouTube and Reddit are your friends. Google will help you get there. When it comes to software and a little bit of the workflow, and it's not complete, and I'm being honest, it's ever evolving, but the tool I use the most is the Fusion 360. I use it for modifying CAD files, creating my CAD files for the CNC, for 3D printing, for the laser engraver. Inkscape might be my simplified workflow go-to for creating simple DXFs that then I can go and manipulate them for CNC machining on a 2.5D kind of aspect rather than 3D machining. Didn't go too much into all the machining concept. I'm happy to go deeper into that if anyone is really interesting. UGS is the sender most people use. Basically, most of the GRBL-based Arduino controllers will spin up a serial port over USB that will get the communication. So that will be Java-based pieces of code that will send the G code, which is coordinate system, over to the serial target. I use brackets and Atom, as I use OS X or Linux a lot. So that will be my text editors. G code is basically just a pile of text. I do run all the machinery from Windows, as it's quite a prerequisite for some of the software, operational software for the machines, but they are in the process of migrating into being a bit more free. So I can just plug them anywhere I want rather than being limited by my old laptop that it's half dead. CNC USB is the controller, the knockoff controller that used to be in my machine that came from China, or a knockoff of USB CNC. And Octopi, I spoke about that to a gentleman yesterday around the challenges of printing over the network. But Octopi is a Raspberry Pi distro designed for managing 3D printer over the network and manage all your print workflow, all the way from slicing to printing, with monitoring it through cameras and some really clever plugins. Some people like it. I had mixed experiences with that. A lot of lower quality prints due to the bandwidth of the data bandwidth you send the program through, and it's kind of affecting the print quality, in my opinion. I have a list of things that I'm planning to still make happen. Among them is building a safe cracking robot. This is the next one on the list, just because this is some metal welding projects like the wood burner style. I have some gargoyle base manufacturing going on. I put a new fence in the garden, so I want to put gargoyles on the post, make them look nice. And Bash likes living in boxes. I'm going to make him a box to live in. And with that, and with time, I will thank you a lot. I had a few slides and I was hoping I might have time for question and answers, but since I managed to nail 90 odd slides in 30 minutes, I am one of the happiest chaps today.